Mike, if you get ready to make the recording. Right. Can I welcome all members and officers to the meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee, which, due to government advice to practice social distancing, this meeting will be held virtually. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and officers will be asked to present a summary of the key points of their reports. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of the chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure that connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, they should use the instant messaging IM icon in the bottom left of the Skype window and simply type speak, and the chairperson will come to you in the order the requests are received. Please do not use your microphone until invited to do so. In the event that the committee requires to vote on the appointments of the election of the chairperson and the election of the vice chairperson at today's meeting, I will in turn announce the name of every committee member present and ask them to cast their vote accordingly. I will then announce the decision made by the committee. In the event that the committee requires to vote on other items of business before it at the meeting, Democratic Services will type "Please vote now" in the instant messaging icon, and I will announce that the members of the committee have 20 seconds to vote by typing "for", "against" or "abstain" in the instant messaging icon. The decision made by the committee will then be announced by Democratic Services. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I will announce the names of the members of the committee in attendance at this meeting, and officers will be asked to introduce themselves as and when they are invited to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. For the record, my name is Andrew Rees, Democratic Services Manager. We will now go to the agenda. The first item of business today is the election of chairperson. Could I have nominations, please?
Andrew, can you just tell us who's present at the meeting, please, first?
Oh, certainly, yes. The members present at the meeting are Councillor Altaf Hussain, Councillor Amanda Williams, Councillor Bridie Sedgwick, Councillor Cheryl Green, Councillor Janice Lewis, Councillor Lynn Walters, Councillor Mike Kern, Councillor Pam Davis, Councillor Paul Davis, Councillor Richard Granville, Councillor Tom Beadle, and Mrs. Jo Williams. Thank you. We'll now go to the election of chairperson. Could I have nominations, please?
Can I speak, Andrew? Altaf?
Certainly, yes.
I will nominate Councillor Lynn Waters for chair.
Okay, is that seconded?
Andrew, sorry, I put to speak. It's Councillor Sedgwick. I would like to second that nomination, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sedgwick.
Can I speak, please, Andrew?
Any further nominations?
I would like to nominate Councillor Alex Williams, please.
Is that seconded?
Can I speak?
Yes, certainly.
Alex Williams has asked me to give his apologies for the meeting today. Something has come up rather unexpectedly. So I don't know whether he's able to be nominated if he's not here, because I'd be happy to second him anyway, but I don't know what the rules are.
Right, he can be nominated in his absence. So with that, Councillor Amanda Williams, you happy to
Second it, yes,
you'll be
please.
seconding his nomination? Right, okay, we therefore have two candidates, so we will now proceed by way of a vote, and I will announce each member in turn, and we'll ask you to announce your vote then. So I will now commence that process. Councillor Altaf Hussain.
Councillor Hussain, you're on mute. I could see your mouth moving.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Councillor Lynn Waters, please.
Okay. Councillor Amanda Williams.
Councillor Alex Williams, please.
Councillor Sedgbeer.
Councillor Lynn Walters, please.
Councillor Cheryl Green.
Councillor Alex Williams, please.
Councillor Janice Lewis.
Councillor Lynn Waters, please.
Councillor Lynn Walters.
Me, please. Councillor Lynn Walters.
Councillor Mike Kern.
Councillor Lynn Walters, please.
Councillor Pam Davis.
Councillor Alex Williams, please.
Councillor Paul Davis.
Councillor Lynn Walters, please.
Councillor Granville.
Councillor Walters, please.
Councillor Beadle.
I abstain, Andrew.
Mrs. Jo Williams, please.
Councillor Alex Williams, please.
Okay, members, I'd like to announce the vote, and the vote is as follows. For Councillor Lynn Walters, 7 votes. For Councillor Alex Williams, 4 votes, and there was 1 abstention. I therefore declare that Councillor Lynn Walters is elected chairperson. So, with that, Councillor Walters, if you would like to assume the chair, please. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you very much, members. I'll do my best to do my best as chair for you all. So now move on to item number 2, which is the election of vice chairperson. Please, could I have nominations for the vice chair? Any nominations?
We have to have somebody, Chair. I'll nominate Alex Williams.
Can I step in and say Alex Williams didn't want to take on the position of Vice Chair? He's informed me.
I'll withdraw that then, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Would anybody else like to stand as Vice Chair?
I nominate Cheryl Green.
Thank you, Pam. Could I have a seconder for Cheryl?
Can I say I'd rather not do it. I already chair 2 scrutiny committees and I think this would be taking on a step too far. Thank you very much, Pam, nevertheless.
Okay. Altaf, are you interested?
Well, I will nominate Councillor Burley.
Sorry, who was that again, please?
Was that Councillor Sedgbeer, Councillor Bridie Sedgbeer you were nominating?
That's correct, yes.
The positions of chair and vice chair need to be occupied by members who are not members of the executive group.
Oh. No.
So then the potential people who I don't know if any of you are prepared to stand could be Councillor Amanda Williams, Councillor Tom Beadle, Mrs Williams as the lay member. They are the only people who are, and Altaf, Councillor Altaf Hussein. So it's really whether any of you are prepared to stand as Vice Chair.
I have no problem to stand as Vice Chair.
There is a message in the chat, Chair.
Mrs Williams, would you be interested in standing as Vice Chair as well?
Thank you, Chair, but no, I would decline that. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
So then for Councillor Hussein, can I have a proposer and a seconder for Councillor Hussein, please?
I'm happy to propose that, Chair, seeing as we've got a willing victim, as it appears.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bridie. Could I have a second?
I'll second it if you like.
Thank you very much, Pam. I appreciate that. So Altaf, I'm delighted to say you're now the Vice Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Grateful.
Thank you. Congratulations. So we'll move on to item number 3, apologies for absence. Democratic Services Officer to announce apologies for absence received.
Thank you, Chair. The only apologies for absence I have received are from Councillor Alex Williams. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item number 4, declarations of interest. If any member or officer has an interest to declare in any matter on the agenda, please type speak into the meeting chat and I'll come to each of you in turn to announce your declaration of interest. Councillor Amanda Williams.
I wrote speak on the last agenda item.
Oh, apologies, sorry.
I have to do the school run, so I have to leave by 3 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much, Amanda. So if no declarations of interest, we'll move on to item number 5, approval of minutes of the meeting of the 10th of September 2020. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
And was that?
Second. Yes.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Cheryl, thank you, Cheryl. Right then, moving on to item number 6, the Governance and Audit Committee Action Record. I'll now ask the Democratic Services Manager to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual report which comes before each meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee, which is to outline the action record, which is attached as Appendix A. The committee is asked to note the action record. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mark, before I ask anybody to move and second, I see you want to speak on item number 6. Mark Thomas, that is.
Yeah, yes, please. Thank you, Chair. It's just one particular point I wanted to raise. There's an item on the action track. It's the first item. It's going back to 26th of April 2018. It's headed up External Audit Annual Audit Plan, but it relates to Cardiff City deal then basically, and the Joint Committee and so on. So as I say, it's been on the action tracker for a little while. We've done a little work on this in terms of researching a bit of the background and so on. And what we've been able to obtain is the annual governance statements and for the City deal for the last 2 years, which are quite detailed documents, very similar to the format that you will see for Bridgend. You've seen for Bridgend Council previously and later on the agenda, identifying some areas for improvement. We've also had sight of a recent internal audit report undertaken by Cardiff Council's internal audit team in relation to the city deal, looking at a number of different aspects of governance and so on for the organisation. Again, making some recommendations for improvement, but basically saying there's satisfactory internal controls. So really, it was trying to get a bit of a steer from the committee, really, whether they were content based on that information that is available. The annual governance statement is publicly available, for example. A bit of a steer, really, where they were content to take the item off the action tracker, because it's understanding really what else we would potentially look at or not, really. So as I say, it was after a bit of a steer. There is information out there in relation to the way the organisation is functioning and so on, and just to see what the committee felt about that particular item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark. On that basis, I'm happy for it to come off, but any comments from the rest of the committee, please? Thank you, Bridie. I'll take the absence of any comments as an agreement, so I think that one can be marked as closed with that update in place, if that's all right. And could I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, please?
Move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. So, item number 7, the Audit Wales Governance and Audit Committee update. I'll now ask Audit Wales to present their report.
Thanks, Chair. Myself and Sam will touch briefly on this report. Just give me a chance to open it here. I'll touch first on the financial audit work section at the very start, and that's very short and very straightforward. We're currently doing the audit of the Council's 2019-20 grants and returns, and as you'll read, it's housing benefit, teachers' pension, non-domestic rates, and there's 2 pooled budgets. So those audits are currently ongoing and progressing well. And then we audit the 2021 statement of accounts, which is scheduled to start in December. And by start, we mean audit planning and so forth. So that's where we sit with the financial audit work. And Sam will touch on the performance audit work section.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the 1920 Performance Audit Work Programme, the Transitioning to New Health and Social Care Partnership, we are about to start scoping that piece of work with a view to delivering in the spring. The Annual Improvement Report, which I think I described at the last committee, is now the Annual Audit Summary. This report we intend to now present at the next Audit Committee in January. The 2021 Performance Audit Work Programme, the Performance Audit Certificate has actually now been issued on the 6th of November, and we stated in that certificate that the Council did actually comply with the Local Government Measure Act, and the performance report was indeed published before the 31st of October. The assurance and risk assessment work, this is ongoing, and we are actually in the process of arranging a meeting at CMB in February alongside CIW and Estin, where we intend to present our findings and discuss and determine with CMB our work programme for next year. The recovery planning work, this again is ongoing. So we have observed the recovery scrutiny panel and CMB, so that work is currently underway. Financial sustainability, phase 1, this is complete, and the link to the report you'll find in the latter part of this update. And phase 2 we are currently scoping. The project with a digital focus, we have drafted the project brief and since received comments from the Chief Executive Officer. So we're in the process of preparing a response to those comments with a view to finalising the brief and continuing with the fieldwork there. The COVID-19 learning project, this again is continuing. And in terms of the links to the reports, Mark, was there anything else?
Yeah, just a couple of points. Thanks, Sam. On the final page of the update paper, the national studies, the second row has the National Fraud Initiative in Wales 2018-20. We'd sought to get that as a substantive item on today's agenda, but that hasn't been possible. So we'll bring that to the January committee. There's 4 recommendations in that report. I think the content of the report, is fraud. It sits with the audit committee. But one of the 4 recommendations is aimed at audit committees or an equivalent committee, but principally audit committees. So we look to bring that to the next meeting. And similarly, the financial sustainability report, we sought to get that onto today's agenda, but we'll now move that to the January agenda, and we can pick that report up at the next meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you both, Mark and Sam, for that. Are there any questions, please? So, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that recommendation?
Move.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to item number 8, which is the position statement raising our game on tackling fraud in Wales. And I'll now ask the interim Chief Officer Finance, Performance and Change to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, my name's Jill Lewis, Interim Chief Officer, Finance, Performance and Change. This is a brief position statement. At the last Audit Committee, you will be aware that Audit Wales raised their report tackling fraud, which is appended to here at Appendix B. And you, as the Audit Committee, asked where we were as a council in response to that audit report. So this report here takes you through the various recommendations and domains from the Audit Wales report, and gives you a flavour of some of the things that are going on in the council and what we're doing against those particular domains, and an opportunity really for you to contribute to how we approach our fraud risk. So the key themes are set out in paragraph 3.2. Those are the key domains from the Audit Wales report. And if I take you to Appendix A, you'll see here that we've put together a position statement. And I'm indebted to both Joan and Mark from Internal Audit and Simon Roberts, our Corporate Fraud Officer, who are all at the Audit Committee, who I'm sure will be happy to help me in taking any questions you might have. So I'll take you through this very, very quickly, Chair, just pulling out a couple of key points. So the first domain you'll see in Appendix A is the leadership and culture. And I think it's really important here that the recommendation was really for the Welsh Government, but also for ourselves. So we are responsible for our own counter-fraud activities. We haven't got a national one as the Health Service in Wales has. So we do remain responsible for our own counter-fraud activities, and therefore it is important that the Council and indeed the Audit Committee remain on top of that. And I think it's fair to say the Council sets very high standards for both members and officers and deals with any allegations very, very promptly. And you will see that there's a list there of policies, procedures and reporting mechanisms that are in place. The second domain, the risk management and control framework, you'll be very familiar with this as the Audit Committee. Fraud is included in all the risk registers, and work is ongoing to develop a detailed fraud risk assessment process that links with our corporate risk management process. I think this is an area where we feel we can probably do better and firm up on what's what's happening in terms of our fraud risk assessment. So once that particular risk assessment is developed, we'll establish that, and internal audit will key into that to ensure that their risk-based annual audit plan picks up any of those key risks. The third domain, policies and training. And I think, again, we've identified that this is an area that probably we can do more on. We have got policies, procedures and reporting mechanisms, as I said, that you will be familiar with at the Audit Committee. And we're also developing an anti-tax evasion policy just at the moment. And we do quite a lot of awareness through Bridgendas, through, as you can see, a whole list of things that we do across the council in terms of training, induction training. There's e-learning training modules, but I think it's fair to say that Simon, Joan, and myself have had a discussion really about this in terms of making this a little bit more unilateral across the council and consistent, so that you will see posters, or, well, not anymore because nobody's there to see the posters, but metaphoric posters, I think, at the moment with COVID. But obviously making people more aware of what they should be doing and to keep a lookout for fraud. We've also had Tarion in, which is the Regional Organised Crime Unit, and they've undertaken some test email phishing exercises and gave us some training in what to look for in terms of digital fraud, which I have to say was reasonably scary in terms of combating it. Capacity and expertise. You've heard me refer to both Joan and Mark as internal audit, and also Simon Roberts. We are advertising at the moment somebody to assist Simon in terms of the council tax reduction fraud, and that should give us a lot more capacity and resources to tackle this. It is on the rise, sadly, and COVID has exacerbated that. Wherever there's been tranches of money, unfortunately, people are very keen to get hold of that money by whatever method that they try and employ. Tools and data. Mark referred to NFI. We've always cooperated and rolled out NFI reasonably well in the council. We've brought it together on a much more consistent basis over the last couple of years, and carefully investigate any matches and make sure that we're as successful as we can be in identifying duplicates. And also, you'll be familiar as the Audit Committee with the Blue Badge initiative that was rolled out last year. We would probably have done further training and rolled that out again, but unfortunately, obviously, with COVID at the moment, it's very difficult to do that. And I have to say that not many people are parking necessarily in the car parks at the moment. Collaboration, there's a long list of those that we partner with and collaborate. I think Bridgendas seem to be a good partner, and obviously that helps us to make sure that we've got the most effective anti-fraud service that we can offer. And then reporting and scrutiny, some of it's quite easy to collect in terms of numbers. Prevention of fraud is notoriously difficult to assess, and there's lots and lots of attempts to say how much fraud there is in the public sector, some eye-watering numbers. You can never really be certain how much you're preventing, but there's no doubt that having an effective anti-fraud culture and anti-fraud schemes most definitely act as a deterrent. and obviously yourselves. A critical part of the anti-fraud culture is the Governance and Audit Committee, and it's one of the key core functions of you as a committee. So that's a very brief run through the domains, what we're doing. I'll ask Joan and Simon if they want to add anything to that, or Mark. Otherwise, happy to take questions, Chair. You're on mute, Chair.
Sorry, my husband was washing up and banging pots in the background, and I didn't think the committee wanted to hear that, so I do apologise. Would Joan, Simon, or Mark like to come in at that point? Is there anything they wanted to add?
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps if I could make a couple of points. I think, yeah, Jill's presented this report very well. Obviously, I've got the sight of the situation across 4 different local authorities, and I think it's fair to say the Bridgend has been very proactive in this area and certainly recognised that could do with some extra capacity, hence Simon's role being adjusted and so on, and looking for another post to be filled as well. Yeah, and I think the point about culture is all important. You've got to get the tone right, and that runs throughout the organisation. The only point I was going to make perhaps as well is internal audit's role in terms of carrying out the sort of routine audits and planned audits that we do, to give assurance as well that there are adequate controls in place, including preventing fraud. So that's an important sort of preventative measure that, as Jill has said, it is difficult to measure that, but that is a key part of what we need to do. It's far better to prevent fraud taking place than have to deal with it after the event, but there's obviously the tools in place to deal with that as well. So yeah, thank you to Joan and Simon for pulling this report together. I think all organisations can improve, and I think Jill mentioned the fraud risk assessment. That's an area I think all authorities could improve on in terms of the way that it identifies the risk areas in relation to fraud. That's a continually evolving picture, and COVID is a good example of that. And when things like COVID happen, fraudsters come out of the woodwork and try and latch onto any opportunities they can in terms of exploiting any systems and protect when there's public money sort of available. They'll do anything to try and get their hands on it. So yeah, so thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I can see 3 people want to speak, or 2 people want to speak. So Altaf first off, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chair. Just want to say thank you to Jill. A great presentation. Yes, I could understand it well. My suggestion is that we should have a member development activity which should include tackling fraud for all councillors. And it may be a great idea when this report comes to us later sometime. All members should be briefed really what we should be looking into, because it's such a huge subject. I'll be grateful for your comments really, and say how we can deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Altaf. Jill, I know that there is some talk. There's some comment in the report about potentially training for members. Is there anything that you can talk about at the moment on that, please?
Not at the moment. I think it's a very good suggestion, Councillor Hussain, and I think that where we've run sessions in the past, unfortunately, they haven't been particularly well attended. I think people think that fraud is something for just finance, and it's not a particular subject that seems to excite, but I think we'll have another go at that, and because I do think it's incredibly important, and particularly, as I say, the increase in the fraudsters and their wish to get council money has been quite phenomenal, I have to say, over the COVID period. I had a spoof only at 1 o'clock today. So there's all sorts of very, very rather clever ways of trying to extract our money.
Definitely. Thank you, Jill.
And actually, could I just make one point, Chair? Sorry. And it's not necessarily particularly in the reports, but you will have seen, I think, all over the media since March, there's always some sort of underlying criticism of our ability to get money out of the door quickly. And I think it's fair to say, when you've seen this report and when you've seen some of the attacks on the council, you'll appreciate why we have to get a balance between speed and protecting the public purse. So we've taken a lot of the criticism on the chin, but I remain sort of steadfast that we have got the right balance.
Right, well, that's really good to hear, and thank you very much, Jill. Mrs. Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Lots of positives in that report, Jill. Thank you very much indeed for the update and for the position statement, which is, and I really welcome the way that we're using the Audit Wales framework of their report for that position statement. It really sets it out very, very well. I'm afraid I'm going to be echoing Councillor Hussein's point about the training for members, particularly for our committee. I think it's really important, and with the emphasis, of course, I would like to see on the digital risk, because the cybercrime has been on the increase, well, for decades actually, but now there are so many additional opportunities for fraudsters. And let us not shy away from realizing that those fraudsters can be internal in the organisation as much as external. So we really do need, I think, to speedily, come up to speed with this quite quickly as a committee and play our part. And I think the other part we can really play is helping you with your risk assessment, because we all have our different experiences and our different environments and our different histories, and we can really help you with that risk assessment, the fraud risk assessment. You're quite right about COVID, of course. Everybody knows there's additional risks there, and of course the big impact of that has been the massive increase in working from home and additional IT links, additional use of passcodes, etc., and the attendant risks then that are associated with those for all employees and for the council as a whole. So I think those are my 2 points. I would just reiterate the training, but also let us take part also in the risk assessment, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Pam, I can see that you wanted to speak. Oh, sorry, Mark. Before I bring you in, Pam, I think that Mark Thomas would like to respond to the comments raised by Mrs. Williams first of all, and then I'll bring you in, Pam. So, Mark, please.
That's all it was, really, an offer to basically investigate what sort of training that we can pull together, maybe working with colleagues in Audit Wales and perhaps National Anti-Fraud Network and so on, maybe Tarian possibly, just trying to get a balance really of what would be useful and helpful to members, and also picking up Mrs. Williams's point, feeding into the fraud risk assessment possibly as well, because it is an area that we're all trying to grapple with in terms of developing that. So I'm happy to try and look into that and come back with a proposal. There is actually an audit chairs network meeting right at the end of this month, and I'm pretty sure, I haven't seen the actual final agenda, but I'm pretty sure there's an item on fraud. It certainly will be to do with the national study, so there may be some opportunities arising from that as well to piggyback on what's presented there as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark. And Mark Jones from Audit Wales, I think you want to respond on this before I might bring Pam in. Is that right?
Yeah, well, just to on the back of Mark's comments.
Sorry, Mark, can't hear you very well.
Sorry, my speaker was on top of my head. Sorry.
Oh.
I've done that once before, at least once before. But no, just to Mark mentioned training and whether he could do something with us there as well. And absolutely, if there's training for members or members and officers, it can be an internal audit stroke external audit. training in that respect. That's for sure. So some of the digital stuff that's been mentioned, just as a side comment, the 2020-2022 NFI, National Fraud Initiative, has already started, believe it or not, for that biennial, and HMRC are in on that for the first time, and they'll be providing data across the UK on income, property, quite a few areas, so HMRC will be quite a powerful addition to that tool. So that's just a side comment, really, to show how things are developing. And in coming in, the HMRC has been doing so under the Digital Economy Act 2017. So it's becoming, it's developing, and it's getting stronger and stronger, that particular piece of work on a national basis. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the offer of help, Mark. I'm sure that will be greatly welcomed by both Jill, Simon and the team, so thank you. And Pam, can I bring you in now, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. We did actually have an ex-policeman last year come down from Cardiff, and he actually gave us some information on fraud and scams. And obviously centred at the councillors because of residents even coming to our door. Did we have to ask them in, etc., etc.? That was really helpful. But also our personal life as well. And that would involve everybody, because he gave us really interesting comments and email addresses which we could get into the media to find out about different areas of scams, and checking on not just your credit limits, but lots and lots of things to do with monetary things. He was absolutely excellent. There wasn't many councillors there, I think about 8 or 10, but it was very, very well received. And he was, he gave a show and everything, PowerPoint, and he was very down to earth. So it wasn't anything high tech. It was, anyone could understand what he was saying, and of course being there and done it with the police, he was absolutely excellent. If we could get him back again, then I think the committee would really benefit from the sort of training that he was given. So, just a remark, and maybe someone else and him coordinated or whatever. It would be a real good presentation then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that suggestion, Pam. That's great. Thank you. And Simon, you've asked if you could come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, for the purpose of the recording, my name is Simon Roberts. I'm the fraud investigator for Bridgend Council. We have actually got a meeting with South Wales Police at the start of December where we are discussing this person attending or delivering remote training to us. So that is something we are currently looking into. I believe it's the first week of December we've got our meeting. He works for the Organised Crime Unit in South Wales Police. So hopefully we'll be able to put something together, hopefully in the new year, I would have thought.
That's really good news. Thank you very much, Simon. Could I ask a question as well? Because the notes that I'd made was around, it was building on Mrs. Williams's suggestion about really what support is needed to develop the fraud risk assessment process, and also from the timescales that we are working to. Not trying to put anybody under pressure, but it's rather than getting the finished article, that all systems go before it's launched. Are we going to be launching it in stages as it's developed? Is that the intention, or or what is the intention on developing that process?
I'm going to ask Joan if she'd like to come in on this one, but I think Mrs. Williams' suggestion of the committee being able to help, I think, is one that we should definitely take forward, and it may be that we can have some sort of session at the next audit committee in terms of informing that fraud risk assessment. I'll ask Joan if she wouldn't mind coming in.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's Joan Davis, Audit Client Manager. In response to the fraud risk assessment process, it is very much early days. We're trying to draw on best practice from elsewhere and also try and look across the 4 councils that we deal with to make sure that we're not missing anything and getting best practice from all 4. So I think the suggestion is that we would probably bring it as it develops so we can get some feedback, because we want to make sure it's a useful document. And like you said, everyone's got different experiences, so I think that would be really useful. So it's something we perhaps make a start on and then bring it forward for comment as we go along.
That would be great. And may I make one suggestion? And I don't know whether this would fly, but if it's quite a long time before January, if it's appropriate, could any working papers be shared with the committee between now and January so that they could feed back comments earlier, and then people who are able to support in the hopefully in a timely manner to help you deliver it.
Yeah, that seems fine, doesn't it, Joan?
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
And so then if I ask if committee members, as and when if they feel they can contribute, that would be wonderful. It would help us get on the front foot. Well, thank you very much, Jill, Simon, Joan and Mark, for that report and the update. Could I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation, please?
Move.
Second.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item number 9, the progress against the internal audit risk-based plan, 1st of April 2020 to 31st of October 2020. And I'll now ask the head of the Regional Audit Service to present this report. Or is it Joan, you as the client manager?
Yes, Chair, it's myself. I'm going to present this one. Okay,
thank you, Joan.
Okay, bear with me a second. Presented to Audit Committee is the progress made against the audit plan that was agreed at the last meeting. So this takes the progress up until the 31st of October 2020. Appendix A has been laid out very much as committee are used to from the previous year. It lists the audit plan and then the progress against each job to date. I just want to make committee aware that work is ongoing, and obviously we're all working in different ways. Auditors are getting used to the remote way of working. However, we are mindful that a lot of the areas of high risk on the plan are also areas that are under intense work pressure. So sometimes there have been delays in starting audits or getting evidence because staff are very, very pushed in the high pressure areas. Nevertheless, at Appendix A, it shows you the progress, and if I summarise it, so as at the 31st of October, we've completed 10 audits, and 6 of those we have completed with an opinion. 2 audits are out in draft, and 13 audits are ongoing. And I've also allocated a further 8 audits that are due to commence shortly. So hopefully at the next audit committee, you'll have a lot more results. However, of the 6 that have been completed with an opinion, it's pleasing to say that 1 had substantial assurance and 4 had reasonable assurance. There was 1 that had limited assurance, and there's a little in paragraph 4.4 of the report, there's some narrative there to describe what happened. It was in supporting living, and there was some missing money reported. However, this was during the summer when that service was under intense pressure and money went missing. We couldn't establish whether it was fraud or whether it was just because of the chaos that was happening at the time. However, us together with the service have reviewed the area, and we established that the controls had really slipped and the checks and the balancing. So we've worked with them. We made some recommendations which have all been accepted, and their systems and controls are now better placed, and hopefully that will mitigate any risks. So
So as well as that limited report that had 5 recommendations, there were further 2 significant recommendations that have been made in the reports that have been finalised. One against Church Crematorium, and that was basically making the crematorium personnel aware that they do have to abide by Bridgend financial procedure rules as well as the joint committee delegations, and I think there was just a little bit of confusion over what rules applied, so a recommendation was made there. And another one on the MasterGov system, which is the process and planning, it's the system that stores and processes the planning and building regulation applications, and there was a recommendation made there to make the system more secure, so if a user had personal interest that they wouldn't be able to access those records. So all in all, at the moment, there's no real areas of concern, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Joan, for that full update. Mrs. Williams, you'd like to speak?
Yes, Chair. Sorry, I'm just scrobbling around here, really, with different windows. Thank you very much. I have 2 questions, really, and I wondered, one of them might simply be just reminding me how your report works, Joan, and indeed what we saw in the plan. It's about really, can you just clarify, this is the first question, can you just clarify how do we detect from looking at this particular report which are the high, medium and low risk areas? That's the first question. And then the second one is really about follow-on or follow-up work on those reviews which have a limited view given. Thinking particularly as an example of the one on contract management, with review was in, I think it was in February this year. It was conducted by SWAP, and that was a limited opinion. And although there was, a management action report provided, which showed that all of the recommendations were completed, will there be a follow-up on that particular example? And then where do other follow-up audits and reviews, where are they catered for in our kind of newly formatted plan, please?
Okay, I'm happy to take that, Chair.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Williams. Yes, just to clarify, the audit plan that was approved last time, which is set out in Appendix A, they're all the areas that were deemed high risk. We had to summarise the plan based on resources and what was going on in the summer with the pandemic. So there are no jobs on here that were deemed anything other than high risk. So they're all equally important, and that's what we aim to set out to cover during the year. However, the recommendations obviously, when we make the recommendations, is high and medium risk recommendations. But I think you were asking, Mrs. Williams, about the high, medium and low risk items that are on the plan. Have I understood that correctly?
Sorry, yes. Yes, I'm asking about the, I think you've clarified and reminded me that all of the items on the plan were in fact high or medium risk.
So moving on to the other queries that you've asked, in regard to the follow-up work of previous limited assurance reports, we do go in and we try to go to revisit those in a timely fashion, usually no more than 3 months after the report has been issued. However, we have to also have a sensible approach, and based on what has gone on during the summer with the pandemic, we've decided there's no point going back to review something if the managers are telling us that they're still working on some of those recommendations because of other work pressures elsewhere. So there are They are on our plan, and we will be following them up. And as we follow them up, they will be reported to yourselves and included on Appendix A. So far this year, we followed up on the BACS report that was a limited assurance report that was issued last year, and it's out in draft when I prepared this statement, but the final has now been, well, the opinion there was reasonable. It was much improved, and I'm waiting for the draft to come back, but that's the only follow-up we've done at the moment. As far as the contract management review, Swap, you are right, did the original one, and it was limited. That work has been allocated to them again to do, but in light of everything else that is Swap are doing and what we're doing as a council, I think that'll be something that'll probably start early in the new year. Is that answering the questions?
That's great. Thank you very much, Joan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joan, for that. If there's no other questions, Amanda, I can see that you're having to leave at the end of this item. So if there's no other questions, could I have a mover and a seconder for this recommendation, please?
Mo.
Second.
Thank you very much. I hope you get the school run okay, Amanda. Take care.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye. So now moving on to item number 10, which is the review of the annual governance statement 2020 to 21. And I'll now ask the Interim Chief Officer Finance, Performance and Change to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, Jill Lewis, Interim Chief Officer Finance, Performance and Change. What you have in front of you here is an update on the annual governance statement. You will recall that the Audit Committee agreed the annual governance statements for 2021 previously, and we produced an action plan, and it's good practice, and obviously we want to review progress against the significant issues that we identified during 1920 that we were intending to address in 2021. So you have at Appendix A the annual governance statement, and that hasn't been changed, so that is as it was set out. So there may be issues in there that you think are no longer relevant or have changed, and that's right, but we are 2/3 of the way through the year. So the action plan is shown at Appendix B, and these were the significant issues that we said that we were going to make progress on. Now, in some cases that was then and now is now, and we have had a global pandemic in between, but I think you will see that there has been progress against many of the issues that were raised. Some of them less than we would have liked, and others have had to go in a slightly different direction because of the pandemic. So I'll very briefly go through them, and happy to take any questions then. So what we said, I think, at the end of March was that COVID would have a significant impact on workforce delivery of services, economic and social pressures and disruption, and I think that's probably the understatement at the time. So I think you'll see in the update, the final column on the right, that we are learning to live with the consequences of trying to deliver. We have gone through various different stages, obviously, of full lockdown, release of full lockdown, local lockdown, fire break, and now into a national set of regulations. And obviously that has had an incredible impact on our ability to deliver effective public services, a lot of which will have been delivered in a digital manner. And obviously we've been trying to protect those who are at the most vulnerable in society on a number of different fronts, in terms of PPE, free school meals, helping those who have been shielding. Then we've had to lead on test, trace and protect. Now we're preparing for mass vaccination programmes. Those of you who are on the cross-party recovery panel will know that a number of recommendations have been made to Cabinet to help to inform our recovery planning. And that's all being looked at now in terms of how we come out of this pandemic. So I think it's fair to say that we probably didn't realise in March just what a difficult time we would have over the last 8 months. In terms of the impact from the European Union and how the demands will be factored into the medium-term financial strategy, Brexit had taken quite a back seat, I think, for quite some time. But I think it's fair to say that that's obviously picking up again now to see the impact of that. And that will be across the UK, not just obviously on Bridgend. I think it's fair to draw the committee's attention to financial sustainability and the difficulties that we've got. We have got a quite significant deficit in our finances, as have many councils at the current time. The Welsh Government have set up a hardship fund, a significant hardship fund, and we've been putting in monthly claims against our cost pressures, lost income. We have got reduced council tax collection at the moment and increased council tax support. And there have been some fortuitous savings, but I have to say that they're relatively small in the overall scheme of things and certainly won't mitigate the incredibly increased costs that we've had and will continue to have. This is not going to go away. We will still have some really significant costs going into the rest of the medium-term financial strategy. So I think it's fair to say that we've been successful in getting money from the Welsh Government in terms of our costs and loss of income, probably running at about 70% of what we've asked for, which I think is a reasonable return on the costs that we've had to incur. And so we're keeping the MTF obviously under continuous review. And I know that when Nigel comes on to present the Treasury management with Eilish, we are taking advice. Obviously, there's some rather odd things happening in terms of monetary policy. So I'm sure he'll refer to those. The Council has established specific earmark reserves for COVID, and we're reviewing those quarterly to make sure that they're sufficient. In terms of the changes in senior management, I'm sure you'll all know that Cllr has now commenced with us as the new Corporate Director for Social Services and Wellbeing, and also Janine has returned as Corporate Director of Communities and is injecting a significant amount of energy into looking at a number of schemes with us and the capital programme in particular. So some of the risks that were identified back in March are now largely mitigated, and there's a much greater resilience across the council senior management team. I have to refer to the one outstanding issue, which is a replacement for myself, and sadly we didn't manage to appoint on a second attempt, and so as you can see, I am still here in post as the interim for the Chief Officer post, and hopefully as we come out of COVID there'll be a successful outcome to that process. In terms of safeguarding, the Audit Wales report into safeguarding, the Corporate Director, Sue, before she left, Sue Cooper, came in front of the Audit Committee, went through the actions, and I think those proposals for improvement were noted, and that has been implemented successfully. The outcome of the care inspector at Wales, this was the inspection of older adults, and I think, as you appreciate, this has been an area of significant pressure under COVID. Progress has been made in a number of areas, but I think it's fair to say that there has been a slower amount of progress than the service itself would have liked. And so they are now producing a new action plan, which has been obviously updated with new timelines and will be monitored very closely. And Cllr has committed to that. I think one of the recommendations that we made for ourselves was to make sure that we had a good oversight of the shared arrangements for environmental health services and shared regulatory services, which is obviously hosted by the Vale of Glamorgan but covers Cardiff, the Vale and Bridgend. And I think, as you will understand, they have been under the most incredible pressure this last 8 months, not only with track, trace and protect, but in all sorts of transgressions under COVID rules, etc. So there have continued to be the SRS committee meetings and regular meetings, but the scrutiny arrangements are still outstanding and will need to be progressed once we get through some of this crisis time for them. Fraud, I won't dwell on because we've already had an item that we've taken the committee through in terms of what we're doing on our approach to fraud, and the digitalisation piece is also progressing significantly. And I note Mrs. Williams's comments, which are very pertinent in terms of digital fraud as well. And then the increasingly challenging budgets for schools. I'd love to give you a good story here, but obviously the impact has been significant. There were some fortuitous savings, if you could call it that, from having schools closed. But obviously, as we approach the winter and the increased costs of COVID, then we are going to get significantly increased costs if they have to keep windows open with PPE, with cleaning, all sorts of different things, and the pressures on schools to make sure that they are safe. We have been successful in having grants from the Welsh Government and indeed claiming many costs back. But I mean, at Q2, the end of September, the budget monitoring report showed a current projection of an overall deficit of 848k. So obviously there are some difficulties in terms of school budgets, as you might expect. So that was really all I wanted to say. I've tried to keep it as brief as possible, but to give you a flavour of what we've done against the action plan. So happy, Chair, to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Jill, and for giving us the up-to-date position, warts and all. So Bridie, you're going to have to leave and then rejoin. So thank you for letting us know. Any other questions for Jill? So I'll take silence as
Chair, can I just say I'd like to thank Jill for a comprehensive report and an overview of all the things that she's discussed, and I totally agree with her that the digital side of things will have to be looked at and we'll have to take it very seriously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you. Before I move on to the asking for a mover and seconder, I agree with you, Jill, about the SRS, and whilst we do need some oversight on it and scrutiny, now isn't the time to do it because it's just going to push them over the edge, and they wouldn't be able to deliver what we need them to deliver during this time. So, Bridie, you want to speak now?
Yeah, sorry, I thought I'd come in before I pressed restart on my computer. Just on the shared regulatory services, I just wanted to pass on Councillor David White's appreciation of the service. He's recently told us about the work that they've done in terms of his work at the Westwood Community Centre. So it's just sort of passing that message on to those officers concerned, because we know how big a workload they've got at the moment. So any good news stories that we can pass on to our officers, I'm sure are greatly appreciated. So yeah, just wanted to pass that on, that Councillor David White is very appreciative of all the work that has been done by SRS to help him and the Westwood Community Centre.
Thank you very much, Bridie. So, as nobody else indicated they want to speak, could I have a mover and seconder for the recommendations, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Second.
Thank you very much, and thank you again, Jill, for that comprehensive report. Sam, I can see, is typing a message. Just wanted to hold until we go on to... Sam, did you want to come in?
Sorry, Chair. I was just going to thank you very much. I need to leave for another appointment.
Oh, well, thank you very much for all of your for the reports and your updates, and stay well and safe. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye. So we now move on to item 11, Treasury Management, the half-yearly report 2020 to 21. So I'll come back to ask the Interim Chief Officer of Finance, Performance and Change to present the report.
Can I do a swift handover, Chair, please, to Nigel Smith? Nigel Smith's going to present this.
Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jill. Good afternoon, all. Nigel Smith, Interim Group Manager, Chief Accountant. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the half-year position in relation to Treasury management activities and also the mid-year review of the Treasury management strategy. A couple of changes are proposed to the strategy, which I'll detail further in my update, and these will be subject to Council approval. Treasury management is bounded by legislation and codes of practice, and our strategy falls in line with these, and we comply with those through the year and have done so for the period of the 30th of September. The Governance and Audit Committee is responsible for the scrutiny of the Treasury management strategy and activities, and this report aims to enable and support that scrutiny. As well as regularly reporting to this committee, we also report to Cabinet and Council. In terms of the Treasury management activities for the first 6 months, if I could refer the committee to Appendix A and start at Table 1, this provides the position as at the 30th of September. The Council's long-term borrowing remains unchanged at 96.87 million, and with an average fixed interest rate of 4.69%. Not anticipating that will change in the near future, and that has been static for a little while. Other long-term liabilities are mainly the PFI scheme to provide Maesteg School, and that will continue to reduce over the remaining life of the PFI scheme. The Council has had a favourable cash position over the 6-month period to 30th September, and so has been able to invest surplus cash flows in a range of investment options. As at 30th September, the Council had invested £64.29 million across a range of investment types, including central government, the Debt Management Office, and that I note on the table says PWLB, it is the Debt Management Office, local authorities, banks and money market funds. The DMO have recently changed the interest they offer on investments, as Jill alluded to earlier. We are now at the position that for any deposits with them for up to 2 weeks, they will apply a negative interest rate of minus 0.02 for overnight and minus 0.01 for up to 2 weeks. Since investments cannot pay negative income, what this means in effect is that the negative interest rates will be applied by reducing the value of the investment, so we would get back slightly less than what we put in. The security remains, however, in that we will still get back contractually what we has been agreed when we put the investment into the DMO. The DMO are offering 0% interest on any deposits between 2 weeks and 2 months. So as a result, we tend to use the DMO as a deposit last resort if we are unable to secure any other short-term deposits. But it is probably the most secure vehicle we have. Inter-authority lending remains a crucial investment vehicle for Bridgend and a key element of our Treasury management strategy. And this has been especially so over the last 6 months, when we've had to manage quite significant cash flows in relation to the grants that have come in to support businesses, our own additional costs and grants that we've received towards those. Local authority lending offers security whilst also securing a return. If we think of local authorities, the majority of income is from central government grants and local taxation. So in effect, councils offer significant security as well as flexibility. As at 30th September, the council had 28.5 million on deposit with other local authorities, with an average interest rate of 0.49%, as compared to the bank base rate of 0.1%. And as just mentioned, the DMO of 0%, for example, for 2 months duration. Councils benefited from a number of local authority investments at higher rates of interest over the years, which is reflected in the 0.49% average return shown. In particular, we had 2 long-term council investments of 4 years at an interest rate of 1.3 and 1% respectively, and a couple of investments of between 1 and 2 years, but between 0.8% and 0.95%. However, these are due to mature in November and December, and as a result, I anticipate the average rate of return will drop significantly moving forward, and I dare say our next report will demonstrate that. Money market funds are also a crucial option within our strategy, and will continue to be so. These are secure, relatively secure investment vehicles which offer a return. There have been some movements in availability of money market funds over the last few months, and one fund has closed recently. So we are looking to increase the number of funds available to us to offer greater flexibility whilst minimising risk through increased investment diversification. We continue to be able to invest surplus funds as the council remains in an under-borrowed position. So in other words, we are able to use reserves that we've got in the short term to support capital investment and manage our day-to-day cash flows. As a council, as a professional, what's deemed a professional status in terms of investments, we have to maintain £10 million in cash or near cash to maintain sufficient day-to-day liquidity. But we're able to do this through the money market funds, as I mentioned, as they are instant or next day access. So that provides us the security and liquidity to meet day-to-day needs. Table 2 in the appendix shows our need to borrow to finance capital investment, otherwise known as the capital financing requirement. This shows a need to borrow of £157 million. However, as mentioned, by using the reserves in the short term, our liability benchmark, or at least this is the maximum we would expect to practically need to borrow in the year, is 103 million as at year end. As noted earlier, our current long-term borrowing is just under 97 million, so we are within where we would anticipate we would be at the year end. In terms of the wider economic context, the impact of COVID and Brexit remain challenges. The MPC last week held interest rates at 0.1%, but there remains a risk that interest rates could go negative. Though I think it's a bit too early to say whether that would happen, but we are monitoring and will monitor this very closely. At a more practical level, the team has managed significant cash flows over the last 6 months as the Welsh Government provided upfront funding for a range of grants, including the business rates grants of circa £30 million and advance payments of our revenue support grant. In the short term, at the start of the year, use was made of DMO before they reduced the rates, but also other local authorities, and we continue to manage large cash flows due to both additional costs incurred as a result of the pandemic and additional income from various grant funding to meet those costs and other grant funding schemes. We continue to monitor our borrowing position, and where possible we would seek to reschedule long-term debt where we could achieve cost savings. We have recently discussed the ability to reschedule our long-term debt with our Treasury Management advisors, but at present the cost of premiums would outweigh the savings, and the lenders, given the rates they are receiving, are unlikely to really want to consider rescheduling the current interest rates. Of course, we will continue to monitor and review options wherever possible. Further information on the nature and duration of investments is provided in the appendix at section 4. And section 5, it provides an indication of the impact of a change in interest rates, both on investments and debt, but I would say that is more of an indication rather than an expectation at this point in time. So whilst the figures may seem quite large, I would expect that to happen over the rest of the year. Moving on to Appendix C. At Appendix C, we included a draft revised Treasury Management Strategy. As required by regulation, we have to review the Treasury Management Strategy and with advice from our Treasury Management advisors to assess whether it needs to be updated in light of changing circumstances in the year to date. As I mentioned earlier, one money market fund is closed and is no longer available to us, and so that at present reduces our ability to spread our funds. We also currently have a limit of £20 million in total for all investments into money market funds, which provides a further limitation. So we are seeking to increase both the number of money market funds we can invest in, but also alongside this, in order to give us a greater capacity within that vehicle, looking to increase the total limit of investments from 20 million to 30 million. Alongside this, we are looking also to increase the investment limits in registered providers from 3 million to 5 million. Although we don't have any investments in registered providers at present, 3 million is restrictive if we were to look at that as an option moving forward. The amendments are highlighted in red in Appendix C at Table 6, which is the approved investment counterparties and limits, and Table 9 are overall investment limits. I will draw the committee's attention to the Table 6, where we have 3 million against AA- for registered providers. This should read 5 million, so apologies to the committee for that error on my behalf. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Nigel, for that full explanation. Do I have any questions from anybody on the updates on the Treasury Management Performance and also the proposed changes? No. So could I ask for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation then, please?
Move.
Thank you. Seconder, anybody?
Second.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you for that full explanation. So we'll now move on to item number 12, which is the Disabled Facilities Grant, the Progress Position Report and Position Statement. And I'll ask the Interim Chief Officer Finance, Performance and Change to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start, and then Martin Morgans has joined us now, and we'll be happy to take any questions you may have. So for the purposes of the recording, Jill Lewis, Interim Chief Officer Finance, Performance and Change. This is a very brief report and a very brief position statement on the Disabled Facilities Grant and the progress that we're making. And it was just really to update the committee. We had a report some time ago from Audit Wales on Disabled Facilities Grants, and a number of recommendations in there. And I'm sure the Audit Committee will recall, this is not one of those PIs that we're right at the top of the tree on. In fact, we're somewhere near to the bottom of 22 local authorities in Wales in terms of time, to take the time for each of the adaptations to be delivered. Subsequent to that, internal audit did some work and made some further recommendations in terms of governance and process on this particular topic. So I thought it was opportune to come back to the committee to say that what we have done, rather than just tinker with the service and implement some of the recommendations that were made, we've done a root and branch sort of review of the work, a complete lean thinking piece of work. We've looked at it from all different aspects, and are now in the process of putting all those pieces back together again. So I have to say that our progress has been a little slower in terms of what we would have preferred, but I think it'll eventually result in a far better service for the person on the receiving end. So this isn't just about the council, this is about the people who need this service desperately, and I think what we've tried to do is make it a very people and citizen centred piece of work. We've also, I think it's fair to say, and Martin can elaborate on this, extended the piece of work. So what we discovered, that by looking at the high ends, the really expensive aids and adaptations that are needed through the Disabled Facilities Grant Service, we discovered really that there were difficulties in some areas of aids and adaptations at a lower end as well. And so what we've done is work with social care and wellbeing to have a whole end-to-end review, which goes from, say, something like a grab rail that ought to be almost automatic in somebody's house, right through to a full-scale wet room or other facilities that might be needed to enable that person to stay at home and have a good standard of living. So we've done a huge amount of work in terms of mapping all those different streams, where they come from, because some can originate in the Princess of Wales, some might originate through social care and wellbeing, some may come through housing. So we've mapped them all, and we're now almost in a position where we can actually make sense of it all and change the way that we're operating. So that's the whole service. In terms of our ability to deliver the agent service and the surveying service, we've taken some soundings from other local authorities, Neath Port Talbot in particular, Rhondda Cynon Taf, lots of internal discussions to look at what the best model of service delivery is. And I think what we've established really is that we're not delivering the agent function particularly well externally. So we're making some considerations about how we might deliver the agent function in a better way. We also realise that we probably don't have the appropriate level of resources and expertise. This is a service that's lost key members of staff and has some vacancies and therefore needs to be built back up. And so in the meantime, we're proposing that we look at how we supplement our own resources to deliver a better service. So I've elaborated a little bit on the various aspects of work. What we are intending to do is bring a report to Cabinet in December to push forward on some of these recommendations, and then following hopefully agreements by Cabinet, we'll then come back to the Audit Committee to give a much fuller explanation of where we're going with some of the work and some of the improvements that can then be moved much quicker than we can at the moment. So Martin, do you want to pick up on anything that I just outlined?
I think you outlined it quite sufficiently in terms of our aspirations from complex adaptations right through to the minor works. I think that's been the differential, to understand the landscape of those adaptations and really focusing on the citizen at the centre. I think that's where we've been not at best value in terms of a council service. So the key focus, as you said, is once we take those reports to Cabinet, we'll be in a position there with the proposal, etc., to actually make a difference in these citizens' lives, because adaptations and whether they're minor or major can make a significant difference to people's well-being when they're living in their own home.
Definitely. Well, thank you both for that and for all the work you're doing, because it is absolutely critical that we do get this right for those people in our community, for the disabled people in our community who do need those adaptations. So thank you. So Mrs. Williams, you'd like to speak, then I'll bring in Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. I just wanted to mention 2 points, really, just maybe more for consideration as we go forward, and maybe some reflection in the next report we see on this subject. And they are, I note that the report says there are no financial implications. I would find it helpful to understand a little bit more about the financial scale of grant that we're talking about, just to give some kind of information, some contextual metrics financially on the subject would I think enhance our understanding of this subject and where the council is with it. That's the first point. The second point is more about really the bigger picture here and the contribution, obviously, that's important from the council in achieving the objectives, not just of itself, but of the wider health and even housing objectives across the public sector. So I would like to see a little bit more on that particular aspect, really. In other words, the strategic contribution that the council is, responsible for and making great efforts to make through this particular topic. I don't particularly need any further comment on that today from officers, but obviously if you want to comment, that's very welcome. Thank you.
Martin, you've indicated that you wanted to come back on that. Did you want to come back now on that?
Yeah, just to give you a quick realisation in terms of the grants, the DFG is up to £36,000, obviously means tested. And in terms of the strategic and contribution across health, etc., there's a number of other budgets that will support from hospital and home as well. So once we do come back to audit, we can outline those budgets and grants and how they utilise with our partners. So I take on Mrs. Williams' points and we can feed that into the next report. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I'll bring in Richard first, then Altaf, then Cheryl. So Richard, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite a while since we've discussed this topic. We had a good debate on it last time about different augmentations and things like that. And listening to what Jill has just said about 3 departments or 3 directives, right? Perhaps what we should do is simplify this and use one director, 1 department to implement all what's going to go on, because then you can monitor it better, right? And you can see exactly what is being spent, not spent, where it's lapsed, not lapsed. When you've got 3 directives, it's very hard to monitor it all. And I think what we need to do as well is, Jill, Martin, is modify the issue with the hospitals. Hospitals come out, they assess, we also go out and assess. Perhaps what we should be saying is that one person should go out and assess the needs of that person, whether it's coming from hospital or in the house. I don't know which is the best way forward on that. But cost-wise, it'll either save the hospital or it'll save us money. So I think, we need a bit of working together with the hospitals to go forward on it. And our augmentations, I think I agree with you. I think we need to get and sort that out. Where an individual needs perhaps handrails, it should go in. And if they want a shower put in the same time, let's do it at the same time. And we did discuss in the last time as well, Jill, that we had people that weren't doing a very good job and we weren't monitoring it either. Right? So, and that was costing the authority probably thousands of pounds where people are going behind and rectifying that work. And I think we should really get down to the bottom of that and make sure that the people that are really qualified to do the work, whatever work it is in somebody's house, they need to be professional in the way they go in there. They take their shoes off or coverings on their shoes, not to dirty things, put things down on carpets. You know what I mean? And they do a professional job. I've just had a brand new shower fitted now, and the bloke even hoovered up behind him. You know what I mean? And that's the way they are these days. But that's all my point, Chair. I'd just like to thank Jill and Martin for that report.
Thank you very much, Richard. And if I can have the name of that plumber, that would be really helpful. But anyway, Jill, I know you wanted to come in and to respond to Richard.
Yes, I think Councillor Granville, you've been eavesdropping on some of our meetings. I think you've hit the nail on the head, really, in terms of the fact that we started down this road thinking that we could make some simple adjustments, we could put some things right quite quickly, and it fast moved into a much bigger piece of work. And you touch on the different ways that people can be referred, the relationship. When I mentioned the OTs in the Princess of Wales, there are others, obviously, and it doesn't necessarily, it's not as simple as putting it under one corporate director. It's making sure that we own the whole system. because there are so many facets to it, and that's the piece of work that I've set out as the task. And Martin's been in so many meetings now where we flow charted. We're now virtually at the point where we understand all the flows, and what I've asked for is money to be put next to the flows so that we completely understand who's making the decision, how much it's going to cost, and how we can fast track some of those things and bring them together. And you touched also on one quite thorny issue, which is that some of this has been outside of the council's control, where quite rightly house owners are able to go to whoever they want to act as an agent. Sometimes that hasn't operated particularly effectively, and we've ended up having to pick up quite a lot of the pieces, and that does cost money. So we have got duplication, we have got poor workmanship, and there's things in train that I won't go into now because I will bring it back as a separate piece of work for the audit committee to look at. But we have talked about how we make sure that the builders are right, the agent works properly, and the time scale is vastly reduced. So everything that you've said we are taking on board, just to give you reassurance.
That's wonderful, Jill. Thank you very much. Richard, did you want anything else on that?
No, Chair, I trust Jill and Martin's integrity, and he'll come to a conclusion, I hope.
Wonderful.
I hope
Thank
so
you.
too.
Thank you very much. Altaf, you were the next one.
Oh, thank you very much. It's just a quick point. I don't have financial language really, but I'm grateful to Jill and Martin making it so easy for me to understand all this. And I'm grateful that there's a disabled facility grant. My question is that there are people living on both sides of unadopted roads with disabilities. Is there a way to help them by adopting those roads and making it priority, because they are suffering and there will be a potential for incidents in those cases?
I think the unadopted roads issue, I have to say, is outside the scope of this at the moment. I hear the point that you're making, Councillor Hussain, and we will take it back, but I wouldn't want to really get the audit committee into the unadopted roads debate at this point.
Okay, thank you, Jill, and thank you, Altaf. Cheryl, you've wanted a question.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say I absolutely welcome the report, because people waiting for a long time for facilities they desperately need is very important. I'd just like to ask, at 4.2, there is a reference to the Cabinet report being given to Cabinet. Can I ask, please, when will this report go to Cabinet? Because delays are really not helping these people who are desperate for adaptations. Thank you.
We're hoping that the report will come in December, Councillor Green. We would like to have made it much earlier, but there are some conversations that need to take place, and I believe that you will be included in those through your relationship with Care and Repair, and so we will be talking through some of the issues, hopefully to be able to bring it forward in December.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cheryl. Well, thank you very much for that, Jill and Martin, and for all the comments. Could I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation, please?
Chair, it gives me great pleasure to move this.
Thank you, Richard.
Second, please. Yes.
Thank you, Altaf.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we now move on to item number 13, which is the updated forward work programme for 2020 to 21, and I'll now ask the Deputy Head of Finance to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. For the recording, it's Deborah Exton, Interim Deputy Head of Finance. This is a standing report that you receive at every meeting, and the purpose of it is to seek approval from the committee for the proposed updated forward work programme for this year, 2021. You can see in the report in section 3, it sets out the background to the report, and within that it references the change in the name of the committee and the amendments to the terms of reference which were agreed by Council at the annual meeting in September. Paragraph 3.1 outlines the core functions of an effective governance and audit committee, and as part of this, that includes consideration of the main risks to the council and making sure that actions are undertaken to mitigate these, and that's through the consideration of reports to the committee and from the review and approval of financial statements. To enable the audit committee to undertake their core functions effectively, we present a forward work programme at each meeting, as I've said, which sets out those items that are due for discussion at future meetings. And that's to give the members the opportunity to endorse the schedule, to consider if there's anybody that they wish to invite to the meeting to discuss the agenda items, and to determine whether there are any additional items that they may wish to consider. So Appendix A sets out a proposed updated forward work programme for the remainder of this year, and for those items proposed to be discussed at the next meeting, which is the 28th of January 2021, they're set out in the body of the report at 4.2. Since then, and we've heard from Sam from Audit Wales, there will be another agenda item likely to be presented in January, and that will be the Audit Wales annual audit summary report. So that will be included as well. And just moving to the recommendations then, it's that for members to approve the proposed updated forward work programme for the remainder of the year.
Thank you very much, Deborah, for that. And I know Mark wants to come in for Audit Well, so I don't know whether it was just about the report that Deborah's just mentioned that Sam had previously mentioned, Mark.
No, Chair. When we covered, I think it was item 7, the update paper from Audit Wales, I mentioned 2 reports at that point that we had sought them to come to today's meeting, but that hasn't happened. So that's the NFI report, which I think should come to January, and the financial sustainability report. So we'd ask that they are added in as well, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. And the question I was going to have, Jill, is on the disabled facilities grants. January's meeting is looking quite. The agenda looks quite full with the Audit Wales reports and what's already on there. As the disabled facilities grant is going to be going to Cabinet in December, is January going to be an appropriate time for it to come to the Audit Committee, or should that come through in April when there's hopefully some chance to embed? Because I'm also conscious of, we've talked about the fraud report coming back in January as well.
Chair, if I may, there'll only be a certain number of aspects that will be going for decision to Cabinet in December. Some of the wider work, I think we would get more benefit at the Audit Committee from it coming back a bit later. That's not to say we'll take our foot off any pedal, but I think it would be a much better picture for the Audit Committee further on.
Great, thank you.
Chair, can I ask a question on that? Would it be perhaps very prudent of us perhaps to ask the Cabinet member to attend that meeting to give us an overview of exactly what the Cabinet are going to do regarding disabled stuff?
Well, whether it's the
social
Cabinet
services.
Well, whether it's the Cabinet member or whether it's the relevant officers, would that be better to come when the report is ready?
It's all right. You know, things are going to be put to the Cabinet. It's just looking at their aspect of which way they're going to go with it. That's all I was thinking of. But I leave it up to Jill. If Jill thinks as an officer is more prudent just to give us an overview, that's fine by me.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that away, Councillor Granville, and certainly the Cabinet member will, and the Cabinet will be making the decision in December, and I'll bear that in mind in terms of the April committee.
Thank you. So for the January, we do need to, we said earlier that we were going to include frauds in the January meeting, is that correct? The fraud
risk assessment.
The fraud risk assessment. We said we were going to include that as well in January, I think, earlier on.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Lovely. Thank you. So if there are no other questions.
I have indicated, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cheryl, I missed that. I do apologise. Cheryl, do you want to come in, please?
Yes, please. Just a quick question. I note in the Cabinet Papers there is a reference to council contract procedure rules and procurement processes that is to be presented to governance and audit. I don't see that title anywhere in the January meeting. Is it under another one? Just a basic question.
I can come in there, Chair. No, it's not included. I think there's been, there's issues with timing of reports being published. Audit committee papers were published prior to cabinet papers, so that's why certain things have maybe, arisen since then that perhaps need to be added into our formal work programme.
Councillor Green, are you referring to an internal? Are you referring to an internal audit report?
Yes.
Right. Okay. You don't get full internal audit reports normally at the audit committee unless they are of limited assurance, and you only get completed ones. And I suspect that this is one I think that you're referring to that wasn't quite completed in time for the papers. But it would depend on whether it was limited assurance, whether the full report. You can always ask for full reports, of course, but generally speaking, and Joan and Mark may want to comment, this is a report, I think, if we're talking about the same report, that didn't quite get completed in time to make this committee. Is that the one you're talking about?
I'm not sure, Jill. It was a reference to the Arbed report, and it's a recently completed internal audit report.
Yes, that's the one.
And it will be presented to the governance and audit. I just looked for it then and I couldn't find it, that's all.
Yeah, no, that is the one that I'm referring to. The piece of work has been completed. You wouldn't normally get the full report at the audit committee. It would be part of Joan and Mark's update at the next audit committee.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Sorry, Mark, we couldn't hear you. You need to put your game headphones on again.
Okay, yeah, just to confirm what Jill has said, that piece of work has recently been completed. It is a reasonable assurance report, so it's not limited, and we would cover that in the usual update that we give at every audit committee. So that's the current intention. So we can cover that as part of the wider report that we present at every meeting in any event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So if no, oh yes, Mrs. Williams, you want to speak?
Sorry, Chair. I just want a bit of clarification, please, and I'm sorry if I've missed this, if someone else has asked for it. Can someone just clarify a little bit more about what's intended with the Governance and Assurance Committee self-assessment item that's coming in January?
So, Mark, could I ask you to come back on that one, please?
Certainly, Chair. Yeah, that's what's intended there is that we issue a questionnaire to members around sort of skills and knowledge and areas of for development and that type of thing in relation to the skills that they perhaps need for as members of audit committee. So that's what we plan to do, is to circulate a questionnaire for members to complete so we can plan some development and training sessions. All members already mentioned one area earlier on in the meeting around fraud, for example. So it's to give that opportunity really for members to inform a training and development programme.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Mrs. Williams? Great. Right, so if there are no other questions, could I have a mover and a seconder, please, for this report?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you, Richard.
Second.
Thank you very much. Item number 14, urgent items. I haven't been given notification of any urgent items. So I'd like to thank all the officers and Audit Wales again for taking us through their reports and answering our questions, and also all members for their contributions to the meeting. I look forward to seeing you all in January, and keep well and safe, everybody. And pleased to say, meeting closed.